Okay, so you know the dungeon, the new one that just came out, Grasp of Avarice? Well, apparently you can get into it from patrol, or so I've heard and done. That's the whole point of this video. But yeah, essentially you can get into Grasp of Avarice. So the first thing we did, or the first thing I did, was went to Skywatch to see if the entrance to the dungeon actually existed in the patrol space. As you can see, it does. It's just there's no way to get rid of the rocks that block you from going in there. So I left Earth and went to the moon to stock up on sword ammo, because you can do that. If you guys didn't know, you can go to the moon and put down one of the banners at Eris and get all your ammo back. You can do it with public event flags, but it's just if there's none near you, you can do it quickly. So we head back to the steps. Now, the reason why we're going to the steps and not Skywatch is because we want to go up into the lunar complex from the moth yards and not back down from Skywatch through the lunar complex. Even though it is quicker to do it that way, we do it the other way. So as you can see here, I'm trying to get into this little space behind these doors. So you can line your sparrow up, and if you jump at the right angle, you'll go through the doors onto the other side, and we just walk up this little diagonal piece of debris, and then we go into this little little outcrop cave thing that's next to it. Now it can be a bit difficult to get through there. In this clip I used a sword, but in subsequent ones I sprinted and slid. Took a while to get in, and you can slide out, so you can slide in and slide out. But once we go through, we touch the doors and then we load into the lunar complex. And so now we're outside of the map in another area, which is technically classed as a private area. So you're the only one that's in here with all the enemies and stuff. So basically, if you have like an understanding of the zone or the area that you're in while inside the map, you can get a pretty good understanding of where you'll be outside of the map. So for example, right now I'm on top of the main room, where in D1 you find the rocket launcher there in one of the chests. But yeah, so we found the load zone for the terrestrial lunar complex, whatever it's called, I can't remember. And now we're trying to find the load zone for Skywatch, which is a bit more difficult because the load zones in Destiny 2 aren't big boxes. They're very refined shapes. They only go to walls, and there's like no gaps for like anything. So as you can see, I'm just wandering around trying to find it, and I do actually end up finding one of the spots where you can load in. However, it's a bit how do I say, it's a bit broken. So sometimes when you load into a new area outside the map, you have a chance to die or just be loaded inside the map after getting a black screen. One of the issues with going through so many public to private to public to private is that the load zones between the two private places sometimes screw up, and they will either push you out into the new zone, but like you're dead, and it'll spawn you back inside at the closest checkpoint, which is the start of the load zone. So it can be quite tedious, and in this run specifically, I died quite a number of times, and it was very frustrating, but eventually you will get it. And I also think there's some type of like how long you're in the zone for determines whether or not you'll load successfully into the next one or fail to load into the next one. So like in some of the clips, because I already knew what I was doing, I was like going at it really quickly, trying to get it done, trying to get into Skywatch so I can see if the area for the entrance to the Grasp of Avarice dungeon. So as you can see here, I'm sorting at the wall, but I'm not going into that little space on the other side. There is a spot on the wall where you can swing your sword, and you'll basically be guaranteed. You know, it's very finicky. It might take a couple of goes, the main thing you want to remember is try and conserve as much sword ammo as you can, because you will need it towards the end of getting into the dungeon, and we'll talk about that when we get there. Alright, so we're back at the exit into Skywatch from the Lunar Complex. And I believe in this one, I actually find the load zone in a different area rather than going underneath where you would normally walk in that little corridor section. I go to the side of it and we end up in Skywatch. But yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of like textured things here that don't have a collision box. So they're basically just like invisible, not really invisible walls, but they're just, yeah, they're weird. So yeah, down this way, obviously we're still on the, we're still technically like, we're near the load zone for Skywatch. So as you can see, I fall into this weird textured area and then I jump up on this little pile of rocks here and then I walk into the wall and it loads me into Skywatch. I have no idea what, like, because the box for it isn't there, but it is. So now if we head back the way we came, avoiding the load zone from Skywatch to the Lunar Complex, which is that doorway up there to the left, you can see that the whole entrance of the Grasp of Avarice is actually loaded underneath the Cosmodrome map for Skywatch. I don't know why, but it's there. I guess it's just to save time. And like a lot of content in Destiny will do this. It will load the starting area of whatever like activity is started in a patrol space. So technically Bit of Heresy also has it as well on the moon. That entire area is loaded underneath it. Deepstone Crypt also has it as well. Last Wish technically has it, but it's very hard to get past SHROUD because there's obviously a big door and you're on the side of a cliff. As you can see here, the textures of the rocks and stuff keep fading in and out. So this is culling because we're technically not meant to be outside of the map. The game thinks that we're not looking at certain things, like certain textures, so they get rid of them. And you'll see it a lot in this video, and it does get very intense towards the end, especially with the skybox, because you'll see when we get there that it's very hard to like see, like even now it's hard to see, like there's such like a like blinding white in the skybox. So as you can see, yep, there we go. I found the load zone for the rusted GANGPLANK, which is the first area in the Grasp of Avarice dungeon. I do not believe the buttons are active because I think the code is in the actual activity rather than tied specifically to the model. So as you can see there, and there's the doors and stuff. But what's interesting about this area, right, is the other tunnels, the false tunnels that when you step on the button you get yeeted out of the ventilation shaft. They have rooms modeled on top of them as if they were like the right room to go up into. And also you can see that when I'm standing on this box here, the whole other section of like where to go next disappears because it's being culled to save on resources, except for the spikes. Those spikes, I don't know. I think it's because they're an entity and they have like a extended property to them being damaged. As you can see, I hit a death box on the spikes that are normally down there underneath the falling platforms. There's a lot of different terminology that is used. And as you can see, I thunder crash up over into the fence and then fall down and then just walk along that little piece of metal. So yeah, now we've gotten past the first part. Now we're up to the thing, and as you can see, I try to see if I can hit the button and then fail to mantle, and then I was like, oh, I'm dead. Nope, you can just walk on water. because I'm assuming the death box is more closer towards the actual water in the map rather than it being like a whole, like the whole chunk of water, again, to save resources. So yeah, now we're in that big silo section, but on the outside, so you can sort of understand how having like a good idea of where you are if you were inside is also a good idea of where you are on the outside. So all of the assets are still loaded too. So the chest, the secret chest that you can get here is also loaded, as well as all of the messages in the bottles that you have to get. And as you can see here, we're now on top of the ramp where you head up and get attacked by the barrel. However, because none of the conditions are met in terms of like activating the switches and that, the barrel just sits there because we're technically on the outside of the map, so we avoid the trigger. So after heading up there, we're now heading into the big room with all the water in it. And when I got here, I was a bit concerned because I was like, how am I going to get past here? Because I have to obviously go around to the other side where the exit is so I can be on top of the corridor that leads to the boss room. Well, it's pretty easy because all it is it's just jump over to the little chunk of room that sticks out and then jump around the corner. And what I do here is I just sword swing, but there's two sewer pipes that you can land on top of that don't kill you because they just sit above the death plane, and then obviously jump on the hive gunk, and then look, we're at the corridor before the first boss. Now once again, as I approach, the world gets deloaded because technically I'm looking at the back half of a wall, so it's like you can't see that. But because the back half of the wall's not textured, it's like, oh shit, hold on. What do we do? So it just deloads it. Obviously the death plane is still there. So now what I was worried about was I wouldn't be able to get on the other side of this room. So the way that I overcame this hurdle, I went around to the right. And obviously there's two walls that squish you. And then I just thunder crashed all the way over to this patch of land here. And I thought I failed. I was like, oh no, I've done. Nope, you can walk on the patch of land. And then you're underneath the room where you can get the exotic engrams for the crystal. Now, obviously the crystal isn't loaded, but what was more interesting is that this map is just the Sepix fight map, just with different things. So as you can see, there's the staircase and the door and the pipe and the box. Just the window's missing and all the other stuff's missing, which is pretty interesting. Anyway, moving on. So now the next challenge in my mind was loading into the Sparrow section without getting the thing where you die. So I was really worried at this point because one, I've got no sword ammo left, as you can see, and two, you know, if you load into the map from that Sparrow part, you'll be locked in that first room where you have to activate the console to open the door. So as you can see there, that is technically the way that you would go down to the Sparrow room, but I missed the load zone, so now I have to go back and find it. Now, the best way to find a load zone if you don't know where it is just to follow where you would walk, like if you were on the inside of the map. There's a lot of glitching textures and stuff and all of that, and as you can see, the skybox is super bright, but yeah. As you can see, I walk into this corner and I load into Shroud. So now we are outside of the map while also being in the next section where the Sparrow race happens. And essentially this is the longest part because what you have to do is go from the very top of this hill all the way down to where you would jump across the big giant chasm into the skull statue. As you can see here, the water is technically got a collision on it, so you can walk on the water, which is pretty cool. But yeah, essentially you just have to keep heading down, but what you do is you jump on the rocks that poke through the bottom of the ground. So as you can see over here, this rock is partially under the ground and it's at a sloped angle enough so that we don't slip straight off it. So yeah, essentially you just keep going down. Eventually you'll reach the this like the crashed ship thing, and so now when you get here there are multiple ways that you can go about it. Obviously you can like go along the side, which I don't recommend because it's quite difficult to jump, and obviously here I've got no sword ammo, so I'm doing this completely like off jumps alone and thunder crash. However, you can use your mini thunder crash, your melee, and then your actual thunder crash to get like an extended jump almost. Also be careful along the way here because certain spots will trap you, and it's quite hard to get back out of them, especially if you don't have sword ammo. But I think I found the way here with that orange part of the ship there, and I was like, maybe I can stand on the edge of it. It's very close to the death plane, and I was like, okay, well, why don't we go over here? Nope, invisible wall. So we land here. So then I was like, okay, the next spot to go is over to the left there. Basically, you just keep heading down the way that you normally would if you were on your Sparrow. There are spots when you get to the end where you enter into that big massive cave. There are spots in there that will trap you. There are spots in there that look like you'll be able to jump on them. So as you can see, you can jump on these beams that are a part of the big ship model, like the destroyed ship model and that. But as you can see, there's nowhere to go up here, so I just leave. So here's more examples of jumping on the ships and that. Quick little selfie, as always. And here, so we're now at the end of the thing, just about to enter the big cave. As you can see, I just thunder crashed into a wall. So there is a, not an invisible wall, but there is a textured piece that was on top that sloped down, and the only reason I knew that was because you can see it from other angles. So here, it took me a while to figure out where to go, and as you can see, I have more sword ammo because I actually left, went back to the moon and made sure I had the highest possible like sword ammo I could, and came back and did what I just showed you again. Flying over here, a lot of the textures and a lot of the stuff starts to glitch out. So now we're on top of the cave at the end, just before you enter the servitor encounter. So as you can see, that is the entrance to the servitor encounter because there's nothing beyond that. It's straight into the void, the skybox, whatever you want to call it. So now our job is to somehow find a way into that, which is quite easy since we're at the end of it. We're stuck in like a rock because it's textured on the front but not the back. So we jump down, we head inside, and then we come out and we're in the sunken lair. So now we're back inside the map, which I think I sort of shot myself in the foot. And here's an example of the bottles and stuff. You can still collect them. Remember, this is in patrol. Like, I don't know why this is loaded in patrol, but it is.
How much a body can bleed without a ghost to stop it. Don't matter though. Ain't nothing more.
So the last thing we had to do was get inside the ball. So I expected it to be quite simple. My idea was to thunder crash up into it, right? But then I realized that I can't gain enough height to get up there, so I went into this little side cubby thing here and then waited for another thunder crash, which was a long time. So look, I thunder crash up, go inside. So now I'm up in where you go towards Willem's Rest. It sucks though, because at this point, that big door that's cracked open, I was like, wait a minute, isn't there a door? And yeah, I loaded in and I was like gutted, because this is another instance of not being able to get to the final boss. Looking at you, Pit of Heresy. So my idea was, how can we get into it from the outside? And I don't think it's possible, just on the fact that it's hovering, or it's suspended in the middle of the area and the area is built around it. I was thinking perhaps maybe instead of coming back into the map at the end there, we stay on the outside and load this section, and maybe I could like get on top of it and like sink into it. But I can't be bothered trying because this took me like 4.5 hours. So anyway, if you guys enjoyed this and made it to the end, it's a pretty long video. Thank you. Don't forget to, like, comment, share, whatever, do the stuff. Yeah, see ya.